The night my son opened his dream bar without me was the night I stopped being the family bank. I didn't know it yet, of course. All I knew was that I was standing in my kitchen in Columbus, Ohio, staring at my phone, waiting for a photo that never came. I had called to ask a simple question. "Hey, kiddo," I said when Jason finally picked up. "So when's the grand opening? I want to make sure I'm there early to help set up, you know? Wipe tables, take pictures, embarrass you a little." There was a pause. I heard music in the background, voices, clinking glasses. Then a different voice slid into the line, smooth, sugar-coated, and sharp underneath. "Hi, Mike. It's Tara," my daughter-in-law said. "The opening was last night." I switched the phone to my other ear. "Last night? You didn't tell me a date yet," I thought. "It was a soft opening," she cut in. "Very intimate. Only important people. Investors, local influencers, a couple of bloggers. You know, people who can really help the business. Only important people." Her words landed like a bucket of ice water down my back. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. I stood there in my faded plaid shirt, the one I wore when I helped paint the bar's walls last winter, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles went white. Jason didn't say a word. He was there. I could hear him breathing in the background, could picture him running a hand through his hair the way he did when he was a boy caught lying about something stupid. "Important people," I repeated quietly. "Don't take it personally, Mike," Tara added. "We just needed to keep it tight. Space is limited. We'll do a family thing later, okay? Gotta run customers." The line went dead before I could answer. I stood in the middle of my own kitchen, holding a silent phone that suddenly felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Outside, the streetlights flickered on over the cracked sidewalk I'd shoveled for Jason's paper route 35 years ago. Only important people. I looked around my house, my paid-off little brick box, the one my late wife, Laura, had filled with crochet blankets and family photos. On the fridge, a magnet still held up a faded drawing Jason had made in second grade. Him and me and a lopsided dog, stick figures with big smiles. Important people. I was the one who'd taken $10,000 out of my retirement to help him sign the lease on that bar. I was the one who'd co-signed the small business loan because the bank didn't trust his credit history. I was the one who spent weekends at Home Depot buying lumber, sealant, light fixtures. "Put it on my card, I'll handle it," while they talked about the brand and vibes and getting on TikTok. But I wasn't important enough to stand in the room when they cut the ribbon. I didn't sleep much that night. I sat in my worn recliner, the one with the duct tape on the arm, and stared at the dark TV screen, listening to the refrigerator hum. Memories came in waves. The first time Jason said, "Dad, if this thing takes off, I'll pay you back and then some." The first time Tara kissed my cheek and called me our silent partner. All the times my Social Security check hit the account and, almost on cue, my phone buzzed. "Hey, Dad, we're a little short on beer orders this month." "Mike, the liquor license fee was more than they told us." "Dad, the fryer broke. We'll lose the Friday crowd if we don't fix it." I always found a way. I canceled a fishing trip. I put off fixing the sagging back porch. I sold my old '68 Chevy truck, the one I used to take Jason to Little League to cover a surprise tax bill for them. Because that's what dads do, right? A week later, almost to the minute, my phone rang again. This time I recognized Tara's tone before she even said my name. The sugar was gone. Only the sharp edge remained. "Mike, hey," she said, too fast. "Listen," the bank called. "The loan payment bounced. They're threatening to hit us with penalties. We thought you'd already transferred the money." I let the words hang there. Normally my chest would have tightened. I would have grabbed my keys, my checkbook, my worry. But something inside me had shifted since only important people. I took a breath. "Tara," I said, my voice calm, almost gentle. "Didn't I tell you I only help important people?" For a second, there was nothing. No music, no voices, no clinking glasses in the background. Just a silence so heavy I could hear my own heartbeat. "Mike, what's that supposed to mean?" she snapped finally. "We're drowning here. This bar is our future. Jason is your only son." "I know he is," I answered. And for the last 4 years, I've treated you too like you were the only future I had. I hung up before she could reply. My hand was shaking when I set the phone down, but it wasn't fear. It was something else. Something colder, clearer. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where Laura and I once taught Jason to add and subtract, and pulled out my old metal lockbox. Bank statements, loan papers, receipts, every transfer I'd made. Just this once, for the bar. Every "you're a lifesaver, Dad." I found a yellow legal pad and uncapped a pen. "Let's see just how unimportant I am," I muttered. Deposit by deposit, check by check. I started adding it all up. By the time I wrote the final number at the bottom of the page, my coffee had gone cold and my shoulders ached. $42,600. That was the price of not being an important person in my own son's life. I sat back, staring at the number until it blurred, and for the first time since Laura died, I cried. Not the quiet, polite tears you wipe away quickly, but deep, angry sobs that came from somewhere under all the years of "sure, kiddo," and "don't worry about it." When the tears finally stopped, the number on the page was still there. So was something new inside me. A line. A boundary. The first faint outline of a man who was done paying for the privilege of being forgotten. The next morning, I woke up before the alarm. For years, that was Laura's habit, not mine. She used to say, "The quiet before the world wakes up is when you can hear yourself think." I never really understood that until I was standing in my kitchen at 6:15 a.m., staring at the legal pad with that ugly number at the bottom. $42,600. In the soft yellow light over the sink, the ink looked darker, heavier, like it had weight, like every dollar had left a fingerprint on my life. Rent I'd covered so the bar wouldn't fall behind at a crucial moment. Extra inventory for the playoff rush. A new sound system because people don't stay if the music sucks, Dad. All of it carved out of my retirement, my savings, the life Laura and I had planned for ourselves and never got to live. My phone was face down on the table. It had vibrated off and on until nearly midnight. Jason. Then Jason again. Then Tara. Then unknown. I didn't answer a single one. That, in itself, was new. For 4 years, I'd trained myself to jump at the first buzz. If your kid is in trouble, you go. It's automatic. Doesn't matter if he's 8 and lost his backpack, or 35 and lost his liquor license application. You go. But that morning, I poured myself coffee, flipped the phone over, and watched it light up with a new string of notifications. 5 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 14 texts. I didn't open any of them. Instead, I opened my wallet and took out my debit card, the same one Jason had memorized for emergencies when the bar first opened. I knew what I had to do. I put on a clean shirt, the good jeans not because the bank cared what I wore, but because I needed to feel like a man who still had some self-respect left, and drove to the branch on Broad Street. The parking lot was almost empty. The air had that early morning chill that makes you wish you'd grabbed a jacket. I walked through the sliding doors and was hit by that familiar mix of printer ink, coffee, and floor cleaner. "Good morning, Mr. Callahan," the teller said. "I'd been coming here for 20 years. You're in early." "Yeah," I said. Figured I'd beat the crowd. She smiled and nodded toward the back. "Mr. Lopez is in his office, if you need anything more complicated than a deposit." Mr. Lopez, the branch manager, had been the one who processed the wire transfer for Jason's lease. He'd shaken my hand then, told me my son was lucky to have such a supportive father. At the time, I'd felt proud. Today, the word supportive didn't sound so noble. He looked up when I knocked on his open door. "Mike," he said, standing up to shake my hand. "Everything okay?" "No," I answered honestly, "but I'm working on it." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit. Tell me what's going on." I took out my list, the same yellow pad with that number at the bottom. "I need to cancel every automatic payment, transfer, and overdraft protection connected in any way to my son's business," I said. "If there's a line where I'm the safety net, I want it gone." His eyebrows went up just a little. "All right, that's a big change. Any particular reason?" I could have made a joke. I could have shrugged it off. Instead, I surprised myself. Because I finally figured out that my retirement isn't a Kickstarter campaign for a bar that I don't even get invited to, I said. And because yesterday my daughter-in-law told me the opening was only for important people. Mr. Lopez leaned back slowly, his face softening. Ah, he said quietly. I see. He turned to his computer. Let's take a look. For the next 20 minutes, we went through every account. The business credit line where I was the guarantor, cancel the guarantee. The automatic transfer that moved $750 from my checking to Jason's every month until the bar stabilizes, stop it. The overdraft protection that dipped into my savings when the bar's account went negative, remove it. With every click of his mouse, something loosened in my chest. Mike, he said at one point, I don't mean to pry, but you sure about this? Once we cut these, there's no more backup if they fall short. I know, I said. For 4 years, I've been their backup plan. It didn't make them more responsible. It just made me broke. He nodded slowly. Fair enough. My phone buzzed again in my pocket. I didn't take it out. When we finished, he printed out a stack of papers. These confirm the cancellations, he said. I'll keep copies in your file. If anyone tries to restart anything on the business account using your name, we'll flag it and call you first. For the first time in a long time, I felt protected. Thanks, Luis, I said. Really? He hesitated, then spoke a little softer. I've seen this before, you know. Parents draining themselves for adult kids with big plans. It usually ends one of 2 ways. How's that? I asked. Either the kid grows up or the parent goes under, he said. Good to see one try a third option. On the way home, I drove past the bar on purpose. They'd painted the brick front black and hung a brand new neon sign above the door. The copper rail. 2 tall patio heaters stood outside, still wrapped in plastic. Through the front windows, I could see the Edison bulbs glowing warm over reclaimed wood tables, the same tables I had helped sand and stain. Someone had taped a flyer to the glass. Follow us on Instagram at the Copper Rail 614. I pulled over across the street and checked the account on my phone. There they were. Photos from the night before. Jason behind the bar, smiling wide, shaking a cocktail. Tara in a short black dress, holding a champagne flute. A group shot of them with 6 people I'd never seen before, arms slung over each other's shoulders. The caption read, Opening night with our favorite people. Couldn't have done it without our incredible team and supporters. Favorite people. Supporters. No sign of the man who'd signed the checks. I sat there and stared until my eyes burned. Then I did something that would have been unthinkable a month ago. I blocked their account. Not because I wanted to punish them, but because I couldn't keep stabbing myself with evidence. On the drive home, the quiet in the car felt different. It wasn't the hollow, echoing kind of quiet I'd been living in since Laura died. It was denser, heavier, like a curtain had dropped between my old life and whatever was coming next. Back in my kitchen, I poured a fresh cup of coffee and sat at the table again. The phone buzzed. I let it. I knew, with the certainty you only get after you've let people walk over you for years, that the second Jason realized the money wasn't coming, he'd show up. At my door. In my house. In my life. Not to apologize. Not really. He'd come to collect. And for the first time since he was born, I was ready to tell him no. By noon the next day, the knock on my door finally came. Not a polite tap, not a friendly, "Hey Dad, you home?" the way Jason used to do when he'd swing by for dinner back when my wife was alive. No, this knock was sharp, insistent, the kind of knock people use when they feel entitled to be let in. I didn't move right away. I stood in the hallway, breathing slow, listening to the hurry in that knocking. 3 hits. A pause. 3 more. Then, Jason's voice, muffled through the wood. "Dad, open up." I took my time walking to the door. My chest felt oddly steady. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was resolved. Like I had crossed a line inside myself the night before, and there was no going back. When I opened the door, Jason was standing there with the exact expression I expected, half panic, half irritation. His hair was a mess, like he'd run his hands through it 100 times, and he smelled faintly of cigarettes, even though he always claimed he didn't smoke. Tara stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes cold. She didn't greet me, didn't smile. She looked past me into my house like she was already deciding where to sit and what argument to lead with. "Dad," Jason said, pushing inside without waiting for an invitation. "We need to talk." I stepped back, but not enough to make it easy. "What's going on?" I asked, closing the door behind them. Tara didn't waste time. "The bank said you canceled the overdraft protection and the transfers. All of them." "Yes," I answered simply. Jason spun around. "Why would you do that without telling us?" "Why?" I asked quietly. "Would you open your bar without telling me?" His jaw worked like he was chewing on words he didn't know how to shape. Tara, of course, had no such struggle. "That was a business decision," she snapped. "We had investors, media, people who needed to be there. It wasn't about you." "But this," Jason added, waving a hand toward me, "this hurts us. This puts us in a crisis." Crisis. The word tugged at something in me. How many times had I dropped everything in my life to fix one of their crises? How many times had my savings disappeared into a hole labeled urgent? "How much do you need?" I asked, not out of offering, out of curiosity. Jason hesitated. Tara didn't. 3,000 by Monday, she said. "We're behind on invoices and payroll." "Payroll?" I repeated. "You hired staff already?" Jason shrugged defensively. "We need a team. We can't do everything alone." "But you can spend your payroll money," I said, "because I've always been there to cover the shortfall. Isn't that right?" Silence. Tara's face tightened. "Mike, come on, don't make this dramatic. You know the bar is our future." "And I'm not your future?" I asked. Jason rubbed his forehead. "Dad, this isn't personal." "It is to me." My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The more calmly I spoke, the more uncomfortable they both became. I walked to the kitchen table, picked up the yellow notepad with the account total, and handed it to Jason. He looked confused, then read the number at the bottom. His face drained of color. "Dad, what is this?" "That," I said, "is what I've spent on you two in 4 years. That's what my retirement looks like now. That's why the transfers are done." Tara grabbed the pad out of his hands, her eyes widening as she scanned the list. "This isn't accurate," she said. "Some of these things were gifts. They were expenses." "For the bar," Jason insisted. "No," I corrected. "They were expenses for your bar, your dream, your responsibilities." Jason threw the pad onto the table. "So that's it? You're cutting us off?" "Yes." "But we're family," he snapped. "Family doesn't treat me the way you have," I replied. Tara's voice rose. "You're being manipulated. You've been isolating yourself. You blocked our Instagram. That's not normal behavior." "I blocked your Instagram," I said evenly, "because I don't need to see pictures from an opening I wasn't invited to." Jason swallowed, hard. "That was a misunderstanding." "No," I said. "It was a message." And then Tara said the sentence that made everything inside me go still and cold. "If our bar fails," she hissed, "it'll be your fault." I stared at her. It was almost impressive, how she could say something so cruel with a straight face. "My fault," I repeated softly, "because I won't keep bleeding myself dry for you?" Jason lifted his hands in a helpless gesture. "Dad, please. We're drowning. We need you." "You needed me last night too," I said, "but you had a room full of important people." The silence after that was thick, shaped like truth. Tara stepped forward. "Mike, listen, if you give us this one last push, we swear we'll start paying you back next year." They'd said that every year. I shook my head. "No." Jason's voice cracked. "So, what do we do now?" "You figure it out," I answered. "You're adults. It's time." Tara exhaled hard. "You'll regret this." "I've regretted a lot of things," I said. but drawing this line isn't one of them. Jason stared at me like he didn't recognize me. Maybe he didn't. Because for the first time in his life, I wasn't rescuing him. For the first time in mine, I was rescuing myself. I opened the door not to let them in, but to let them out. "Good luck," I said. "Truly. I hope the bar succeeds. But not with my retirement." Jason hesitated. "Dad." "Tara," I said calmly. "Jason, it's time to go." And they did. Not because they wanted to, but because I finally made them. 2 days passed before they tried again. That was longer than I expected. I figured Jason would show up the next morning with a fresh apology rehearsed, Tara behind him with a list of numbers printed neatly in a folder labeled "Urgent." But instead, the house stayed quiet. The phones stayed mostly silent. Even the neighborhood, usually alive, with kids biking past my porch, felt muted, as if life knew something was shifting around me. By the third morning, I'd started to breathe easier. Maybe they'd accept the boundary. Maybe the worst was behind me. Maybe cutting the cord would force them to stand on their own feet. I even let myself believe it for an hour or two. Then the doorbell rang. But it wasn't Jason. It wasn't Tara. It was a stranger in a navy blue suit, holding a leather briefcase and wearing the expression of someone who delivers unwelcome news for a living. "Mr. Michael Callahan?" he asked, flipping open a badge. I nodded. "Yeah, what can I do for you?" "My name is Robert Hale. I'm an attorney. May I come in?" Every instinct in my body said no, but years of politeness pushed my feet aside. I led him to the kitchen table, the same place where I'd written down $42,600, and felt something inside me snap. He set down his briefcase, opened it, and pulled out a folder, a thick one. "Mr. Callahan," he began, tone gentle in that artificial lawyer way, "your son and daughter-in-law have retained our office. They're concerned about your recent behavior." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so predictable. I leaned back in my chair. "Concerned about what, exactly?" He cleared his throat. "They have reported abrupt financial decisions, isolation from family, and possible signs of mental strain. They asked me to explain some options for protecting your financial well-being." I stared at him. He didn't flinch. That bothered me more than anything. "Options like what?" I asked. "Well," he said, sliding a form toward me, "one option is voluntary financial guardianship. Your son could temporarily manage your accounts, ensuring bills are paid and funds are handled responsibly." My blood went cold. "Temporarily," I repeated. He nodded. "In cases like this, it usually becomes long-term, but only if needed." I pushed the form back toward him with one finger. "I don't need a guardian." He smiled, the kind of smile dentists use before a painful procedure. "Mr. Callahan, declining is certainly your right. However, if your son believes your capacity is impaired, he can petition the court. This is simply the gentle approach." Gentle. Tara must have loved that word. I felt something tightening behind my ribs, something sharp and electric. Not fear, anger. Clean, focused anger. "Let me get this straight," I said. "I cut off the money, and suddenly I'm mentally unfit? That it?" He didn't answer directly. "They're worried you've been influenced by outside parties, that your judgment is impaired." Outside parties. Meaning anyone who wasn't them. "They are very concerned," he repeated. "They told me you've always been generous, and this sudden change," I cut him off, "is healthy." That startled him. "I don't follow," he said carefully. "It's healthy," I repeated more firmly, "to stop being drained by two adults who refuse to grow up. It's healthy to say no. It's healthy to keep what little retirement I have left, instead of pouring it into a bar that can't balance its own books." His expression hardened just a fraction. "Mr. Callahan, they believe you're vulnerable." I leaned forward. "And I believe they're broke." That landed. He shifted in his chair, closing the folder as if I'd said something indecent. "I'll let them know you're declining," he said slowly. "But I should inform you if they choose to proceed. A judge may order a psychiatric evaluation." "There it is," I murmured. The real reason you came. I stood, my voice calm in a way that even surprised me. Mr. Hale, I appreciate that you're doing your job, but I promise you this, if they file anything against me, I will fight them. I've managed my life alone for years. I buried my wife alone. I paid every bill alone. I paid for their bar alone. And now that I've finally stopped, you're telling me I'm incompetent? He exhaled slowly. I'll let them know your position. Do that. He gathered his papers, walked to the door, and paused. Mr. Callahan, if you have no cognitive issues, you have nothing to worry about. I held the door open. That's what predators always say, I replied. His eyes flickered, just for a moment, and he left. The second he drove away, my hands were already dialing the one number I knew I needed next. A real lawyer. My own lawyer. Not theirs. Attorney Wells, the receptionist answered. How can we help? I need an appointment, I said, my voice steady but my pulse racing. As soon as possible. What's the issue? I looked at the folder on the table, the empty doorway, the echo of that threat disguised as concern. My son, I said, and the war he's about to start. Because now I understood something crystal clear. Jason and Tara weren't trying to get help. They were trying to get access to my accounts, my house, my life, and I had just locked the door in their faces, which meant they were going to come back. Harder, smarter, and with sharper knives. I didn't sleep much the night after the lawyer's visit. I sat in my recliner with the lamp on low, staring at the documents that man had tried to slide across my kitchen table. Voluntary guardianship, as if I were an old dog who needed someone to hold the leash. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Jason's face, not the little boy holding a baseball bat bigger than himself, not the teenager I taught to shave before his first dance, but the man who'd stood in my kitchen 2 days earlier, jaw tight and eyes cold, saying, "If our bar fails, it'll be your fault." That sentence lodged itself behind my ribs like a nail I couldn't pull out. By sunrise, I had made up my mind. If they wanted to fight, I wasn't going in blind. At 8:01 a.m., I was standing inside the law office of Wells and Hartman, a modest building with clean windows and a receptionist who could probably silence a hurricane with a single raised eyebrow. Michael Callahan, I told her, sliding her the business card of the attorney. I have an appointment with Mr. Wells. She scanned her list and nodded. He'll be with you shortly. Please have a seat. The waiting room had the kind of quiet that felt too deliberate, like every piece of furniture was placed to keep clients from panicking. I didn't panic, not exactly, but I felt something close to it. A tight feeling crawling up my throat, like I'd swallowed a stone. When Mr. Wells stepped out, he looked like the exact opposite of the vulture they sent to my house. No slicked back hair, no expensive cufflinks. Just a steady man in his late 50s, with kind eyes, and the posture of someone who had spent his entire adult life fighting battles that weren't his. "Mr. Callahan?" he asked. "That's me. Come on back." His office was simple books stacked neatly, diplomas on the wall, and a box of tissues on the desk, which told me more about his client base than anything else. "So," he said, settling into his chair, "tell me what's going on." I took a deep breath, and I told him everything. The years of financial help, the bar, the secret opening, the withdrawals, the transfers, the debt they shoved onto my shoulders. The night, Tara said, important people. The decision to cut them off. The lawyer who showed up at my door with guardianship papers. Mr. Wells listened without interrupting, which was more kindness than I'd been given in months. When I finished, he leaned back and folded his hands. "Mr. Callahan, what your son and daughter-in-law attempted is called financial coercion. If they try to pursue guardianship against you, they'll be the ones in trouble." "Trouble?" I repeated. "What kind of trouble?" "Legal trouble," he said. "Potentially criminal. You have a documented history of supporting them financially. They never contributed to your care. There is no evidence you cannot manage your own affairs. What they're attempting, if it goes further, could be classified as elder financial exploitation." Hearing those words made my stomach drop. Elder? Me? I felt offended and relieved at the same time. So what do? I asked. We start by protecting you, he said. First, change your locks. Today. Second, freeze any co-signed credit lines. Third, document every attempt they make to contact or pressure you. And fourth, he paused, choosing his words, stop speaking to them without me present. That last instruction landed like a slap. You want me to cut off communication with my own son? I asked quietly. He didn't soften it. For your safety? Yes. It felt wrong, unnatural, a betrayal in reverse. But I also knew deep down that this was exactly what Jason and Tara had been doing to me for years. Cutting me off emotionally until all that was left was a wallet with my name on it. Mr. Wells continued, and one more thing. If they attempt any legal action, we counter immediately with evidence of coercion. You have receipts, bank records, 4 years of proof. Proof. That word steadied me. By the time I left his office, I had a folder under my arm, filled with instructions, emergency numbers, and forms that would protect my accounts. I also had a strange sensation in my chest, fear and empowerment tangled together like barbed wire. At the hardware store, I bought new deadbolts. The clerk, a young man with tattoos and a warm smile, carried my things to the counter. Redoing locks? He asked casually. Yeah, I said, something like that. If you need help installing them, my dad always says it's easier with 2 people. I almost said, I'll ask my son. But the words stuck in my throat. No, I said softly. I've got it. When I got home, I set the tools on the dining table. My hands shook as I unpacked the first lock. Not because I didn't know how I'd installed dozens in my life, but because the symbolism hit me like a hammer. Changing these locks meant something final. Something irreversible. I was shutting my own child out. But as I unscrewed the old deadbolt, the one I gave Jason a key to years ago, I remembered Tara's words. If the bar fails, it'll be your fault. And suddenly, turning that screw didn't feel tragic. It felt necessary. Halfway through the installation, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Jason. Again. This time I let it ring until it went silent. Then I took a breath, finished tightening the last bolt, and stepped back. My front door, for the first time in years, belonged only to me. And somehow, that small, metallic click felt like the first real victory I'd had in a long, long time. I thought changing the locks would give me peace. A symbolic fresh start. A line drawn. A small act of reclaiming a home that hadn't felt like mine in years. And for about 36 hours, it worked. No calls. No knocks. No lawyers in navy blue suits. Just the quiet hum of my house and the strange, unfamiliar feeling of safety. Then came Wednesday morning. I had just sat down with a mug of black coffee when an unfamiliar car pulled up in front of my house, a polished black SUV with tinted windows. My stomach tightened. For one awful second, I pictured Tara stepping out in sunglasses, rehearsed outrage ready to go. But it wasn't Tara. It was 2 men in gray shirts with laminated name badges and clipboards. Utility company. Or at least that's what the logo said. I set my mug down slowly and watched through the window as they headed toward the side of the house toward my meter. I went outside, letting the storm door clap shut behind me. Morning, I called out. Can I help you with something? The taller one didn't smile. He didn't even look surprised. You Michael Callahan? Yes. Got a work order for you, he said, tapping his clipboard. Gas shutoff. My heartbeat stuttered. Gas shutoff? For what reason? Failure to pay. That's not possible, I said. My bill is on auto pay. It always has been. He shrugged. We just do what the system says, sir. I stepped closer, lowering my voice to something calm but sharp. There must be a mistake. Show me the work order. The man hesitated. Finally, he flipped the clipboard around. I stared at the page. My name. My address. But the overdue balance? It wasn't mine. It was the bar's. A chill ran down my spine. Someone had submitted a fraudulent transfer request, a common tactic I knew Jason and Tara had used with vendors, landlords, even their internet bill when they were behind. They'd shifted their business debt to my account and hoped the automatic systems would do the rest before anyone noticed. I took out my phone. "You're not touching that meter, sir." "No," I said firmly. "You're not touching anything until I call the utility company myself." The shorter tech leaned toward the taller one, whispering just loud enough for me to catch. Another one who doesn't want to admit he's behind. I ignored it. I dialed customer service and braced myself for hold music. But this time, luck or something like it was on my side. A representative picked up after 2 rings. When I explained the situation, she typed for a few seconds. "Mr. Callahan," she said slowly, "your account is in perfect standing. There are no late payments, no shut-off request, nothing of the sort." My eyes drifted back to the men beside my house. "Then who submitted this?" A pause. "Let me check the admin log. Ah, this request did not come from your account. It came from..." Another pause. A longer one. A heavier one. "It came from a linked account listed under the Copper Rail LLC." My stomach dropped. Jason and Tara. They hadn't just threatened legal action. They were testing how far they could push. I lowered my voice. "Ma'am, this is unauthorized. Please cancel the work order immediately." "I already did," she said, "and I'll mark your account as verified owner only. No external changes allowed." When I hung up, the technicians were already walking back to their truck. "Dispatch says hold off," the taller one muttered. "Must have been a glitch." "Yeah," I said. "A glitch." But it wasn't a glitch. It was a warning shot. A tiny taste of the chaos they could unleash if I didn't fall back in line. I stood on my driveway long after the SUV disappeared down the street. The quiet of my block felt different now, shaky, unsettled, as if the air itself had teeth. I went back inside, sat at the kitchen table, and dialed Attorney Wells. He picked up on the second ring. "Mr. Callahan?" "They tried to shut off my gas," I said. "Use their business account to request it." Silence. Then a long exhale. "They're testing the perimeter," he said. "Seeing where your weak spots are. That means one thing." "What?" "They're preparing to escalate." I closed my eyes. Escalate. Of course they were. "This isn't just about money anymore," he continued. "This is about control. People like your daughter-in-law, and I have met many like her, they do not accept being cut off. They punish." I swallowed. "So what do I do next?" There was no hesitation in his voice. "Now," he said, "you start protecting yourself like a man going to war." And even though I hated the word, even though it felt ugly and heavy and too dramatic, that's exactly what it was. A war. One that Jason and Tara had already started. And one I could no longer avoid. The day after the gas shut-off stunt, I woke up with a heaviness in my chest I hadn't felt since the week Laura died. Not grief, something colder. The realization that my own son had crossed a line I couldn't ever uncross for him. It was raining that morning. Not a gentle drizzle, but a steady, gray curtain that soaked the street and made the whole neighborhood look washed out. I stood at the window for a long minute, coffee cooling in my hands, wondering how my life had turned into a battlefield between myself and the child I'd raised. At 9:30 a.m., there was a soft knock on the door. Not a pounding. Not a lawyer's knock. Not Jason's entitled rhythm. A soft, hesitant tap. I opened the door and found Mrs. Howard, my neighbor from 2 houses down, holding an umbrella and a covered plate. "Morning, Mike," she said gently. "Heard some raised voices the other day, just checking in." Her eyes were kind in that way older women seem to master, full of concern without judgment. The kind of eyes that make you remember what decency looks like. I stepped aside. "Come in. Watch your step floor's a little wet." She sat at my kitchen table, setting the plate down between us. "Cinnamon rolls," she said. "Still warm. Thought you could use something sweet." I almost laughed. I hadn't had anything sweet in months. When I told her what happened, the bar, the secret opening, the money, The lawyer. The attempted shutoff. Her eyebrows climbed higher and higher. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "That's not just ungrateful. That's dangerous." "I know," I said. "But he's my son." She put a hand on mine. "And you're a man who deserves better than being used." Those words hit me harder than I expected. Because no one had said that to me. No one had even implied it. Not the bank manager. Not the utility rep. Not even Attorney Wells in his cautious lawyer tone. But hearing it from a neighbor, a retired school librarian with more warmth than most families, made something small inside me unclench. "You're not alone," she added. "You hear me? Nobody gets to bully you out of your own life." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." "And, you know," she said, sipping her tea, "we've all seen things over the years. Your boy, well, he hasn't exactly treated you the way children should treat their parents." I frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "I never wanted to say anything. Not my place. But there were nights, late ones, when the two of them would be out front in their car, arguing, loud, and every time your name came up." "My name?" I asked, stunned. "Oh, yes. He'll pay for it. Just ask him. He won't say no. Things like that." She sighed. "You weren't a father to them, Mike. You were an account number." It felt like a punch to the gut, not because it was news, but because it confirmed everything I didn't want to admit. After she left, I sat in the quiet of my kitchen, feeling the weight of her words. She wasn't the kind of person to exaggerate. If she'd heard it, it had been said. My phone buzzed then. Not Jason. Not Tara. A number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice, and then curiosity made me answer. "Hello? Mr. Callahan?" a male voice asked. "Yes. This is Detective Rourke with Community Safety Services. I'm calling because we received an anonymous concern about your well-being." I closed my eyes. Of course. The next tactic. "Let me guess," I said tiredly. "My son or daughter-in-law told you I'm confused, isolated, or acting strange." A pause. "Well," he said carefully, "the report mentioned abrupt behavior changes and concerning decision-making." I laughed an exhausted, bitter sound. "Decision-making like stopping someone from draining my retirement?" "Sir, I'm not taking sides. We just want to make sure you're not being coerced." "Coerced." I almost choked. "I'm the one escaping coercion," I said, "not the other way around." "Would it be all right if I stopped by for a welfare check?" he asked gently. "Just to document that you're safe and competent?" I glanced around my clean kitchen, the new locks on the door, the stack of legal documents on the table, the cinnamon rolls still steaming under plastic wrap. I wasn't the problem. I wasn't the unstable one. And I sure as hell wasn't the one who needed a welfare check. "Come over," I said finally. "I have nothing to hide." 20 minutes later, Detective Rourke stepped inside mid-40 seconds. Calm presence. The kind of man who gives off an air of quiet competence. He looked around, taking in the orderliness of the house, the documents, the coffee mug. "Let's talk," he said softly. So I told him everything. All of it. Every dollar, every manipulation, every threat, every stunt. He didn't interrupt, he didn't judge, he didn't lecture. When I was done, he nodded slowly. "Mr. Callahan," he said, "you are not only competent, you're more clear-headed than half the adults I talk to on a daily basis. I'll close this case immediately." Relief washed through me like warm water. "But," he added, leaning forward, "you need to understand something." My stomach tightened. "When people like your son and daughter-in-law feel their access to money slipping away," he continued, "they get desperate. And desperation brings escalation." "That's what my lawyer said," I murmured. "He's right. They will try again," the detective said. "But next time, they won't use a fake shutoff or a lawyer. They'll go bigger." "Bigger?" I asked quietly. He held my gaze. "Expect them to take this to court." And just like that, I felt the walls close in a little more. They weren't done. Not even close. And the next battle wouldn't be fought on my doorstep. It would be fought in front of a judge. 3 weeks passed after Detective Rourke's visit. 3 weeks of silence from Jason and Tara. Not a knock. Not a voicemail. Not even a text disguised as concern. At first, the quiet felt like a gift. Then it felt like a warning. People like them don't disappear. They regroup. I followed every instruction Attorney Wells laid out for me. Changed every lock. Updated every password. Moved half my savings into a new bank. Filed every suspicious car drive-by in a thick, color-coded binder. At night, I would sit by the window with a lamp on low, watching the streetlights glow over the wet asphalt, waiting for the storm I knew was coming. But nothing prepares you for the day it finally arrives. It was a Thursday morning, sunny, peaceful, the kind of day that makes you forget your life has fallen into a legal nightmare. I was trimming the hedges out front when a white sedan pulled up behind my mailbox. A woman stepped out mid-30 seconds. Professional, hair in a tight bun, clipboard in hand. She walked toward me with a purposeful stride. "Mr. Michael Callahan?" "Yes." She reached into her folder and pulled out a packet the thickness of a paperback novel. "You've been served." 2 words. 2 words that felt like a punch to the chest. I took the papers with numb fingers. "What is this for?" She didn't blink. "A petition for legal guardianship filed by your son, Jason Callahan, and his wife, Tara Callahan." I stared at her. Guardianship. They actually did it. They actually filed it. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a bluff. It wasn't a scare tactic. It was war. The woman nodded toward the papers. "Court date is scheduled for 3 weeks from today. You'll need to sign here acknowledging receipt." I signed, hands shaking. She turned. She left. The sedan disappeared like a ghost at the end of the block, and the silence that followed was unlike anything my street had ever heard. I walked inside, closed the front door, locked every bolt I'd installed. Then I sat at the dining table and opened the packet. The first page hit like a knife to the ribs. Petition to declare the respondent mentally incompetent. Respondent: Michael Thomas Callahan. Age: 68. Residence: Columbus, Ohio. Filed by Jason Daniel Callahan, Tara Lynn Callahan. I flipped the page. It only got worse. Exhibit A: alleged erratic behavior. Sudden financial decisions without reason. Paranoia about family motives. Isolation and refusal to communicate work. Abrupt change of personality. Obsessive record keeping. Installing excessive security measures. Exhibit B: statements from witnesses. And there they were. Mr. Davis, neighbor, claiming I yelled at imaginary people on my lawn. Imaginary? He meant the utility workers. A pharmacist, claiming I forget my prescriptions. He must have been tricked into signing something again. A close family friend, who I didn't recognize but who claimed I'd become confused during conversations. I kept reading. Exhibit C: evidence of financial mismanagement. Large withdrawals with no explanation. They were the ones who pressured me to make them. Failure to maintain household responsibilities. Lie. And D7. Allowing dangerous individuals into the home. That one made my blood run cold. They meant the detective. They meant my lawyer. They meant my neighbors. Anyone who helped me was listed as dangerous. Then I flipped to the final section. Requested action. Immediate and full guardianship over all financial, medical, and legal matters of the respondent. Requested guardian: Jason Callahan. Secondary guardian: Tara Callahan. For a long minute, I couldn't breathe. The house felt small, airless, too quiet. Guardianship wasn't just stealing my money. It meant I couldn't sign checks. I couldn't choose my own doctor. I couldn't sell my house. I couldn't buy groceries without their approval. I couldn't legally defend myself without their permission. It meant I stopped being a person. It meant Jason and Tara would own me. My hands shook so hard the papers rattled like leaves in a storm. I don't know how long I sat there before I finally grabbed my phone and called Attorney Wells. He picked up immediately. Mike? They filed it. He inhaled sharply. Already? I could barely speak. It's bad. They have witnesses, fake ones, made up claims. They want full control. Don't panic, he said firmly. I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are going to bring me that packet today. Every page, every attachment. Do not speak to anyone who contacts you about this. Do not answer any calls from them. Do not acknowledge the petition publicly. My voice cracked. I can't believe he did this. I can, Wells said quietly. And because I can, I know exactly how we fight it. What do I do right now? I whispered. There was a short pause, the kind that lets you know someone is choosing their words carefully. Right now, you breathe, he said. Then you drive to my office. And then, Mr. Callahan. His voice hardened. We prepare to destroy their case. I hung up, grabbed the packet, and stood in my hallway, staring at the door. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about survival. My own son was trying to erase my life piece by piece legally, quietly, permanently. And I knew with a clarity sharper than any pain I'd ever felt that this fight would determine the rest of my life. I wasn't just defending my savings. I was defending my freedom. And I was ready. I drove to Attorney Wells's office with the guardianship packet sitting on the passenger seat like a live explosive. Every stoplight felt longer than the last. Every car in my rearview mirror made me wonder if Jason or Tara had followed me. By the time I pulled into the lot, my palms were slick with sweat. Wells was waiting for me at the front desk. He didn't smile, didn't shake my hand. He just looked at me with the expression of a man who'd seen this kind of betrayal too many times. Come in, he said. I followed him into his office, shut the door, and set the thick packet onto his desk like I was dropping a body bag. He sat, adjusted his glasses, and started reading, page after page. Exhibit after exhibit, lie after lie. With each one, the lines on his forehead deepened. After 20 minutes, he pushed the packet aside and exhaled loudly. Well, he said, they threw everything they had. Can they win? I asked, my voice thinner than I wanted it to be. He leaned back in his chair and tapped a pen against the desk. If you didn't have documentation, if you didn't hire me when you did, if you really were isolated and confused? He paused. Then yes, they could win. My stomach twisted. But, he continued, holding up a finger, you do have documentation, and you're not confused, and you're not alone. He opened a folder on his desk labeled Callahan Defense and flipped through it. I started building this the minute you told me about the first lawyer visit, he said, and now we expand it. What do you need from me? I asked. Everything, he said simply. Every bank record, every transfer, every text message, every voicemail. I want timestamps, dates, receipts, screenshots. I want to drown them in their own greed. I nodded. Done. And I need witnesses, he added. Anyone who has seen you functioning completely normally. I thought immediately of Mrs. Howard, then Detective Rourke, then even the bank manager, Luis Lopez. What about neighbors? I asked. If they're willing to testify, you're capable. Absolutely. Friends? Yes. My utility company? The rep who confirmed the fraudulent request? Perfect. And the pharmacist who got tricked into signing that paper? Wells smiled for the first time since I'd walked in. Even better. For the next hour, he laid out his plan. A formal psychiatric evaluation by a specialist he trusted, not the one Jason would try to hire. Affidavits from anyone who could attest to my stability. A full audit of the financial help I had given them, every dollar, every transfer. A timeline showing how every erratic act was a direct response to their manipulation. A counterclaim for harassment and attempted financial exploitation. They built a case out of air, he said. We'll build ours out of concrete. I nodded, but something still pressed against my chest. What if they get to the judge first? I asked. What if the judge believes them? Wells steepled his fingers. Let me tell you something about guardianship judges, Mr. Callahan. They see everything. They see real dementia, real decline, real inability to care for oneself. And they also see greedy children all the time. More than you'd believe. I swallowed. And what do they do with greedy children? They look for patterns, he said. And your son and daughter-in-law have given us a pattern so obvious it practically glows in the dark. He closed the packet firmly. This is winnable, very winnable. But you need to protect yourself until the hearing. How? He ticked off points on his fingers. Do not answer their calls. Do not speak to them alone. Do not let them onto your property. Document every contact attempt. And, if they show up in person, call the police immediately. I nodded. All right. He leaned forward. And one more thing. I braced myself. You need support, he said gently. Real support. Emotional support. You've been surviving alone for too long. I didn't expect that. Later that afternoon, after dropping off the documents, Wells requested I took a walk around the block, something I hadn't done just for myself in years. As I passed Mrs. Howard's house, she waved me over. Come sit, she said. I made peach iced tea. In her small, tidy backyard, with the smell of cut grass and the soft rattle of wind chimes, I finally told her everything, the petition, the accusations, the court date. When I finished, she shook her head slowly. They underestimated you, she said. That's their mistake. Her voice was warm, but fierce, protective, like she actually saw me not as a wallet, not as an obligation, but as a person. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt seen, not by my son, not by the people I had spent years supporting, but by someone who had no reason to lie to me, no reason to use me, no reason to stay except simple human decency. That small, gentle moment did something to me, strengthened me, steeled me, because now, for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like I was fighting alone, and that made me more dangerous than Jason and Tara ever expected. In the days that followed, my house looked less like a home and more like a command center. Stacks of folders, labeled binders, printed emails, screenshots, dates highlighted in yellow, bank statements marked with red tabs like war flags. For years, Jason and Tara had made me feel like I was losing my grip on things. Now, for the first time, I saw the truth. I wasn't the one unraveling, they were, and they were trying to pull me down with them. Attorney Wells worked faster than I thought any lawyer could. Every time I emailed him a document, he responded within minutes. He collected bank logs showing every payment I made for the bar, the termination of the overdraft protection, screenshots of Tara's manipulative messages, the fraudulent gas shutoff order, recorded call logs from the utility company, a neighbor's statement confirming repeated late-night arguments, a written apology from the pharmacist, notes from Detective Rourke, proof of my stable finances, a list of witnesses ready to testify. The more evidence we gathered, the clearer the picture became. They didn't want to help me. They wanted to own me. And that realization hardened something inside me, something I didn't know had survived after the years of guilt, obligation, and manipulation. My spine. On the fourth day, I had my psychiatric evaluation, the legitimate one, Wells, arranged with Dr. Rachel Simmons. Her office was quiet and warm, decorated with plants and soft lighting. She offered me water and asked me to tell her, in my own words, why I was there. I told her everything. The wedding I wasn't invited to, the $42,600, the manipulation, the bar opening, the threats, the lawyer, the fraudulent bills, the guardianship petition. She didn't look shocked. She didn't pity me. She looked angry. Mr. Callahan, she said, I evaluate dozens of seniors every year. You are not only mentally competent, you're sharper than most 40-year-olds. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. That's going in my report, she added firmly, in bold. For the first time in a long time, I felt my reality being affirmed instead of twisted. 2 days later, Wells called. "Mike, I need you to come in," he said. "We need to go over the strategy for the hearing." His office, normally quiet, looked like a situation room. Papers everywhere, coffee cups, a whiteboard full of notes and arrows tracing motives, dates, behaviors. "Sit," he said. "We've built a wall they can't climb, but we still have to present it cleanly." He walked me through the plan. Dr. Simmons testifies first. Clear, professional, undeniable mental competence. Detective Rourke confirms my stability and their attempted manipulation. Utility representatives verify the fraudulent shutoff request. The pharmacist retracts his statement and explains Tara's deception. Mr. Lopez from the bank confirms my financial clarity. Neighbors testify to my normal behavior and Jason, Tara's late-night arguments. And finally, me. "Your testimony," Wells said, "will make or break the case. Are you ready to tell the truth exactly as it happened?" I didn't hesitate. "Yes." He nodded once, approvingly. "Good, because they're going to attack your character, your memory, your relationships. They'll try to portray you as emotional, unstable, confused." I leaned forward. "Let them try." He smiled. That's what I wanted to hear. Then he flipped open the petition packet again and tapped the top page. "This guardianship request," he said, "was designed to make you panic, to make you fold, to make you so scared you'd sign control over voluntarily." "But I didn't," I said. "No," he replied, "and that's why you're going to win." When I got home, the sun was setting, the sky streaked in oranges and reds over my quiet street. I stood on my porch, the cool air brushing against my face. For the first time since the nightmare began, the fear loosened its grip on me. The war wasn't over, but I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the man they never expected. Prepared, supported, and damn furious. I locked my front door, turned off the porch light, and whispered to myself, "Let them come. I'm ready now." The morning of the hearing felt strangely calm. Not peaceful. Nothing about this situation was peaceful, but calm in the way the world goes, still before a tornado starts ripping shingles off roofs. I woke at 5:30 a.m., showered, shaved, and put on the suit I had worn to Laura's funeral. It wasn't for fashion. It was armor. As I tied my tie, my hands trembled for a moment. Not from fear, not exactly. It was something deeper. A grief I hadn't allowed myself to feel. The grief of losing the son I thought I had. When I got to the courthouse, Attorney Wells was already waiting by security. He handed me a cup of coffee. "You ready?" he asked. "I've been ready for years," I said quietly. He nodded once. "Good, because they're here." I turned. Jason and Tara stood at the far end of the hallway, flanked by their lawyer, the same one who came to my house weeks ago with that patronizing smile. Jason wore a brand new suit. Tara dressed in somber black, like she was attending a funeral. Maybe she was. Ours. She glanced at me with a mix of pity and calculation, the way someone looks at a horse they've already decided to put down. Jason didn't look at me at all. He kept wiping his palms on his pants, like he was the victim. When the bailiff opened the courtroom doors, we filed in two armies, stepping onto the battlefield. The guardianship hearing wasn't dramatic like TV. No shouting, no theatrics, just cold, legal precision. Judge Harper was a woman in her 60s with silver hair, sharp reading glasses, and the expression of someone who didn't tolerate nonsense. I liked her instantly. Jason's lawyer went first. "Your Honor, Mr. Callahan is suffering from significant cognitive decline," he said. "He has made erratic financial decisions, become isolated, paranoid, and vulnerable to predatory influences." Predatory influences, meaning anyone who wasn't them. He listed their fabrications: confusion, forgetfulness, emotional instability, dangerous behavior. And then, as if he'd pulled a rabbit from a hat, he added, "And there is concern he is being manipulated by neighbors and a certain attorney who stand to benefit from his decline." Wells leaned toward my ear. "That's desperation," he whispered. Then came the witnesses. Jason spoke first. He swore to love his father deeply. He feigned worry. He lied with a smoothness that made my stomach turn. Dad's just not himself, he said, lowering his voice. He forgets things. He overreacts. He refuses help. We want to protect him. Protect me. He couldn't even say it without blinking too much. Tara testified next, voice trembling like she practiced in the car mirror. He told us the bar opening was cursed, she said dramatically. He said people were plotting against him. A lie, clear as glass. But the judge didn't react. She just wrote something down. Then they surfaced their witnesses. Mr. Davis, the neighbor who hated me, claimed I yelled at phantoms and talked to myself in the yard. He forgot to mention the men trying to shut off my gas. The pharmacist admitted he signed something without reading it fully, but Tara's lawyer twisted his words anyway. It was all smoke. But smoke can suffocate if no one blows hard enough. When they finished, Jason looked smug. Tara looked triumphant. Wells stood. Your Honor, he said calmly. The defense calls Dr. Rachel Simmons. Dr. Simmons walked up like a woman leading a firing squad. Her testimony was simple, devastating, and final. Mr. Callahan is cognitively sound, emotionally stable, and fully capable of managing his affairs. I have zero concerns about dementia, confusion, or mental decline. Jason stiffened. Tara blinked rapidly. Their lawyer shifted in his seat. Then came Detective Rourke. He testified about the wellness check, the calm state of my home, my cooperation, my clarity. And then, the nail in the coffin. We received a fabricated report about Mr. Callahan's condition. It did not align with reality. Next, the utility representative confirmed the fraudulent shut-off order. Then the bank manager testified that all erratic financial actions came from Jason and Tara, not me. Mrs. Howard spoke last. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't rehearsed. She was simply truthful. Your Honor, Michael is one of the most capable people I've ever known, and for years his son treated him like a debit card with a heartbeat. A ripple went through the courtroom. Even the judge looked up at that. Finally, it was my turn. I walked to the stand slowly, feeling every year of my life, but not with weakness, with weight, with purpose. I told the truth. About the bar, about the wedding, about the money, about the lawyers, about the lies, about the threats, about the humiliation, about love that was never returned. When I finished, the judge folded her hands and said, "Thank you, Mr. Callahan." And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like someone in authority actually heard me, understood me, saw me, not as a burden, not as a wallet, not as a confused old man, but as a person, a father, a man reclaiming his life. As I stepped down from the stand, I caught a glimpse of Jason. For the first time, he looked scared. He should have been, because I wasn't done yet. When the testimonies ended, the courtroom fell into a silence so heavy it felt like the air itself was holding its breath. Judge Harper adjusted her glasses, shuffled the stack of papers before her, and took a long moment to review her notes. I sat beside Attorney Wells, my hands folded tightly in my lap. Across the aisle, Jason drummed his fingers against his pant leg while Tara whispered frantically to their lawyer. They didn't look confident anymore. They looked cornered. Judge Harper finally spoke. "Before I deliver my decision," she said, "I want to make something very clear." Her eyes lifted, sharp as a blade. "This court takes guardianship petitions extremely seriously. They strip an adult of their rights. They transfer autonomy. They are intended for individuals who cannot, under any reasonable circumstance, care for themselves." She paused. Her silence was surgical. "And what I've seen here today," she said, "is not that." Tara's jaw tightened. Jason stopped moving entirely. Judge Harper continued. "I have reviewed the psychiatric evaluation provided by Dr. Simmons. I have reviewed the statements from law enforcement, the bank, the utility company, and neighbors. I have reviewed the petition filed by the applicants." She lifted the thick packet Jason and Tara had submitted, the one full of lies, and set it down with a loud thud. "I find no evidence," she said slowly, "of cognitive decline, diminished capacity, or financial mismanagement on the part of Mr. Callahan." I exhaled shakily. She wasn't finished. "What I do see," she said, her voice hardening, "is a troubling pattern of manipulation, coercion, and financial dependency by the petitioners." Jason flinched as if struck. Tara's face drained of color. "This court," the judge went on, "categorically denies the petition for guardianship." I closed my eyes for a moment. Relief hit me like a tidal wave. But then the twist I didn't expect. Judge Harper leaned forward. "Furthermore," she added, "I am referring this case to Adult Protective Services for review as a possible instance of attempted elder financial exploitation." Jason's mouth fell open. "What?" he blurted out before his lawyer hissed. "Do not speak." But it was too late. The judge turned a cold gaze toward him. "You filed a malicious petition," she said, "based on false statements and fabricated evidence. This court does not tolerate that." Tara looked at Jason with something between anger and fear, not at me, but at him. For the first time, cracks formed in their united front. The judge picked up her gavel. "This hearing is adjourned." Crack. It echoed through the courtroom like thunder. When we stepped outside, the air felt bright and clean, as if someone had lifted a 1,000-pound weight off my chest. Wells clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Mike." "No," I corrected softly. "We did it." He smiled. "Take a breath. Go home. Rest. You're safe now." Safe. It was a word that hadn't belonged to me for a long time. As we walked toward the parking lot, Jason finally approached. He didn't look angry, just lost. A child again, stripped of excuses. "Dad," he said quietly, "you didn't have to do this." I faced him fully. "No," I said, "you didn't have to do this." Behind him, Tara stood rigid, arms crossed, already calculating her next move. But Jason looked broken, or maybe just revealed. "I thought you'd always help me," he whispered. "I did help you," I said, "for years. But the moment you tried to take my life out from under me, I stopped being a father with a wallet." He swallowed hard. "Can't we fix this?" I shook my head. "Not until you learn to live without me," I said. "Not my money. Me." His eyes flickered, but he didn't speak again. They walked away separately, not a couple, not a team. Just two people whose scheme had collapsed. 3 months later, my life had transformed. I sold the old house, the one filled with the ghosts of obligation, and moved downtown to a sunny apartment near the river. Every morning, I walked to the cafe that knew my name. Every afternoon, I tended to the little balcony garden I never had time for before. I joined a men's volunteer group. I started painting again. I took weekend trips. I lived. Not for Jason. Not for Tara. Not for guilt. For me. One evening, while the sun melted into the water outside my window, I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not grieving. Not panicked. Not bracing for the next blow. Just free. The kind of free I didn't know people my age could still become. I picked up a blank canvas, set it on the easel, and dipped my brush into cobalt blue. A new life needed new colors. As the first stroke spread across the canvas, I smiled to myself. "My name is Michael Callahan," I whispered, 68 years old. And for the first time, I finally belonged to myself. And that was enough.